Barakatha Yahweh, Barakatha Yahweh Barakatha Yahweh, Barakatha Yahweh Kal Halalim, Wahawad La, Abanawa, Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Waha, Vachaha Kodash, giving double honor to the elder apostles and the elder bishops and the elders who are the true teachers for the nation of Israel on earth today, of the great millstone GMS, who rule well and who teach well, laboring in this word and doctrine. Salutations to the hopeful elect out there, noising this gospel abroad, and lifting up the standard of Yahweh, Shai, wherever they are located at in sincerity and in truth. Abba Ratazah, which means Father willing. So Father willing, this lesson is edifying. Emperor Nero, we believe through the Spirit, is President Donald Trump. He has declared bankruptcy 6 times in his life. Yeah. Yeah, he made all those promises, right? Which you MAGA, retards, you Edomites, believed during his time of campaigning for president. So look at this. 20 hours ago, BBC, US debt has hit $40 trillion. Will that be a wake-up call? 2 days ago, Politico.eu, why Europe can't escape the fallout from 40 trillion US debt woes. 1 day ago, The Independent, the latest, the US national debt hits a record 40 trillion. 3 hours ago, Newsweek, what America's 40 trillion debt means for your wallet. And this debt really was created by the international banking families, the Dukes of E, the JJs, the Rothschilds, so on and so forth. But yeah, the US national debt, yeah, hit 40 trillion. Okay. $40 trillion. Babylon the Great, America is finished. It's clear. It's finished. Let's go to the book of the prophet Habakkuk, chapter 2, verse 6, and it reads, shall not all these take up a parable against him, and a taunting proverb against him, and say, woe to him that increaseth that which is not his? How long? And to him that ladeth himself with thick clay. Yeah, when you go into the word for thick clay in the Hebrew, which is the Strong's H5671 concordance number, is Ibatiat, okay, weight of pledges, heavy debts. E is bound and buried under this heavy debt. All right, and these heathens are taunting Esau. And this demon trying to take over Venezuela, trying to take over Greenland, going into all these places, trying to increase that which is not his, because he is a thief. This debt will never be paid off. See, Esau has that greater Israel dream. Anyway, this is all heading towards that financial reset. All right, they got that reset button. All right, they'll make their move. All right, it'll be the digital dollar now, and of course, you have the digital pound and the digital euro, along with the digital ID and the digital wallet too, plus the RFID micro chip, right, which is the MOTB, mark of the BEAST, all right, implanted in your hand or in your forehead in order to buy and sell and trade in Esau Edom's satanic New World Order construct. Okay, let's go to the book of Psalms. Chapter 37, verse 21. And it reads, the wicked borroweth and payeth not again, but the righteous showeth mercy and giveth. Yeah, this man is straight up evil. E, right? The Caucasian man, right? All right. Trump, he borrowed money all throughout his so-called career and then just declares bankruptcy like that. Anyway, that's what they do. They borrow and they payeth not again. And who are the righteous? The elect of the Israelites, through the shedding of Yahweh's blood. Okay. Now, the rest of the Israelites, they're not part of the elect, right? We'll make it through the elect that gets delivered on the first go around through the kingdom. The rest of the rest of the Israelites will make it through the elect that make it. Okay, in the kingdom. All right. But yeah, America is a joke, man. The death of the US dollar is imminent. Right? Let's go into some of the articles. 21st of August 2026, the year of sellouts, apostates, and agents. Right, that's when it was put up, which today is Friday, the 21st of August, yeah? Yeah, which is today. All right, let's pop up, man. See in it. What with a 250th birthday, Taylor Swift's wedding, and the Football World Cup, Americans could be forgiven for taking their eye off the ball this summer. But signs of economic trouble have been building. This week they hit the headlines when US national debt passed the $40 trillion or 29 trillion pound mark, raising concerns both at home and abroad. How did we get here? It took almost 200 years for US national debt to reach 1 trillion for the first time, says Mayor McGuinness, president of the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget. That milestone back in 1981 was treated as a wake-up call. At that time, President Ronald Reagan told the nation in a televised address, "If we as a nation needed a warning, let that be it," she said. Jumping to America's 250th year, we are spending more than just on interest payments on our debt. Hitting the $40 trillion milestone was expected, driven by public spending surges under both the Donald Trump and Joe Biden administrations, but it marks another line in the sand. Ballooning costs for social programs and other spending have outstripped revenues undermined by tax cuts. Responses to crises such as the 2008 financial crisis and the fill in the blank have led to increased borrowing. Add to that higher interest rates in response to recent inflation shocks, and the picture begins to look grim. How bad is it? At the beginning of Trump's first presidential term in 2016, US national debt stood at just under $20 trillion. It has doubled in the decade since. The figure is rising by about 90,000, right? $90,000 every second, or $7.8 billion a day, according to the Congress Joint Economic Committee. All right, just let that sink in. What's very different now compared to a decade ago is the level of interest rates, says Eric Swanson, professor of economics at University of California and former senior economist at the Federal Reserve. They love their big titles, don't they? Long-term interest rates in the US are at multi-decade highs. Part of that is concerned about inflation, but part of that is concerned about the extreme levels of US government borrowing. The bond market is demanding higher returns, with investors wary of the scale of the US debt, but also because tech firms borrowing eye-watering sums to spend on AI are competing with the government for investors' cash. What happens when interest rates go up is that the funding of the deficit becomes more expensive, says economist Mohammed, a professor at the Wharton School. Interest payments on government debt are now 15% higher than the same period last year. They are almost 20% of tax revenue, which is larger than defense, he adds. Wow. Let's go to Newsweek. Breaking news, John Roberts says Trump's White House ballroom construction can continue. Bloody things. Let's get this out of the way. The Treasury Department this week confirmed that the national debt had crossed the $40 trillion milestone, having doubled over the past decade and risen from under $6 trillion at the beginning of the century. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said that there was, open quote, nothing magic, end quote, about the 40 trillion figure itself, a sentiment shared by many economists when it comes to the nation's debt. But others are warning that the increase in interest costs and the threat of austerity measures this could lead to will make a significant difference for American households. Yeah, man. It's downhill from here, man. Babylon the Great. Circling the drain. It's not getting any better. There's no healing Babylon the Great. See? The federal government is spending more than it collects. They're spending foolishly by allocating the majority of their federal budget towards the military for the purpose of benefiting the military of the Israelis, funding the carnage over there on the Palestinians, the Ishmaelites, so-called Arabs. Yeah. Meanwhile, you have American soldiers that are collectively jumping off the ship, off of the, the horrid conditions that they are facing. All right. Is it the USS Lincoln or Abraham? Whichever it is again, I forgot. All right. Horrid conditions, man, that they're experiencing concerning, lack of nutrition, lack of sanitation, soap, etc., etc. All right. So these devils are not even taking care of their own military. What does that show you? Goes to show a lot, man. Says a lot. But yet they're allocating a majority of their federal budget towards the military to aid the small hats, the Israelis. Wow. Oh, also the Moabites and the Ammonites, so-called Chinese people and so-called Japanese people. Moab and Ammon, all right, China, Japan, own the majority of America's debt through treasury bonds, which are treasury bonds, long-term debt securities issued by a national, government to borrow money. All right. In America, they are issued by the U.S. Department of Treasury. Okay. Like financial folders held by the Fed in exchange for doing business with these nations. These nations take on that debt. It just so happens that China and Japan own the majority of the debt. Mm-hmm. Anyway, doom and gloom is destined for Babylon the Great. Simple as. It's the book of Sirach, chapter 11, verse 14, and it reads, prosperity and adversity, life and death, poverty and riches come of the Lord, Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahushai. So whether or not a person, an individual, is wealthy or poor, it's all up to the Lord. All right? He pours out those blessings from the window of heaven. Okay. But we're happy to see, all right? It's beautiful that America's going down. And it's going to happen in our lifetime. Yeah, man. The main wire 52 minutes ago. America's 40 trillion plus question, when does the national debt become a crisis? For most Americans, the bond market is something that happens somewhere on Wall Street, far removed from the monthly mortgage payment, the price of a new truck, or the federal taxes coming out for paycheck. But beneath Washington's debates over spending, taxes, and the national debt sits on an enormous financial market that helps determine how much it costs the federal government and ultimately ordinary Americans to borrow money. The US Treasury securities sit at the foundation of the global financial system. Their yields influence mortgages, business loans, commercial real estate financing, and investment decisions around the world. That makes the bond market one of the most important, at least understood, forces affecting the American economy. See that? Bloomberg, US Treasuries fell a day after the Trump administration's surprise decision to increase buybacks of longer dated bonds, showing the move did little to counter angst about the surging government debt. Anything that happens within a 24-hour period is noise, US Treasury Secretary. The basic math begins with the federal budget. When the government spends more money than it collects during a fiscal year, it runs a deficit. The accumulated borrowing from years of deficits contributes to the national debt. A lot of information here. Treasury must also continually refinance securities that reach maturity, meaning Washington is regularly returning to financial markets for enormous amounts of money. That becomes particularly important when interest rates rise. Imagine $1 trillion in government debt carrying an average interest rate of 2%. At that simplified rate, the annual interest cost would be $20 billion. Meanwhile, from RT News, FSB arrests foreign national over Ukrainian drone plot. The Kiev regime has been increasingly relying on T-era IST methods. to compensate for Frontline. Yeah. A lot of things going on, man. Anyway, I'm going to end the lesson there. In closing, Kal Halal Yahweh, Bahasham Yahushai, Waha Rachaha Kodash. So, what for tuning in? Lord willing, this reaches whoever it needs to reach. Okay. Shalom to the Lord's elect of the household of faith out of the nation of Israel, and a bad babal